specifically the Arab cooperation at that time. And for this, we're joined with the assistant lecturer with the Faculty of Political Science, Cairo University, Dr. Mariam Wahid. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you.
Well, good afternoon, Doctor. As Sharif mentioned, that we will be talking about the Arab cooperation during that time, which was a key factor in the victory. Would you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, at the beginning, I would like to say that I'm really honored to be speaking of such a glorious day and a glorious victory for the Egyptian people and for the Egyptian army. And also, I would like to remember some of the events that took place at that time from the Arab cooperation and specifically from the oil exporting countries at that time, when they cut this oil embargo and they cut off all the oil shipments to the US and all the countries supporting Israel at that time, like Netherlands and South Africa at that time. This actually was mainly the decision in mid-October 1973. And at that time, also President Nixon of the US at that time was trying to support Israel by all the equipment and try to convince the Congress to give like $2 billion to the US, to Israel, I mean. But afterwards, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia said that they will impose this oil embargo. Also from the other side, there was also support from Algeria by President Hawari Boumediene, when at that time they supported Egypt by equipment and by also infantry.
Yes. Very good. So looking at the history of the 6th of October, and there is a lot of learned lessons that we definitely refer to in many aspects. But one of them, 43 years back, looking at the model of how Arabs were cooperating together and were standing by each other. Do you think, from the history and 43 years later, do you think how far are we from this model of cooperation, model of unity between the Arabs regarding this cause of protecting the Arab nation?
Yeah, even though during Nasser's time there was this concept of pan-Arabism, which we can't actually witness this ideology every day in everyday lives, but now and then you can witness kinds of cooperation, specifically in severe times. Egypt, for example, when it witnessed a lot of turmoil and economic problems, there was support by the United Arab Emirates and other countries. So also we witnessed yesterday kind of strategic partnership with Sudan in some aspects, also related to the economy and related to fighting fundamentalism.
Yes. So
it's I think it's every now and then, and also that as we learned, for example, from 6th of October, a lot of lessons and we proved ourselves that we have this, we can fight anybody, we can end this sort of Israel invincibility, and that nothing will be in front of us. So I think we can do this today by cooperation with the Arabs, so it's like maybe we can have economic cooperation more, maybe more free trade, more cultural exchange programs, also student exchange programs, so that what happened in the past could continue.
Yes.
Now, Doctor, we're speaking about the Arab cooperation together, and which is a thing that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is stressing on right now. And he did several trips to several Arab countries, and already we have some Arab countries which we're cooperating with. But how can we further strengthen it, especially with all the turbulence that's going on in the Arab world? How can we regain such strength? Of course, you've mentioned some of the things like the student and exchange programs, but what else? And would the media have a role in it or not?
Yeah, I think more investments, for example, regarding economy.
Do you feel we need to cooperate together and have a strong goal on political stances?
Yeah, For in terms of like political, having like one political stance is so I think difficult at that time and in previous time, because even though at the moment of the 6th of October war, it was not there was a political agreement at that time, but afterwards there were differences in opinions. But at the moment of struggle and the moment of like critical stances and critical times, there is common political agreement or common political vision of what's vital and what's important for the Arab national interest and for each state's national interests as well.
Yes, in your opinion, what was the main success element for this unity back then?
I think that all the Arabs are convinced or have a deep belief in the importance of Egypt as a country. So any threat in front of Egypt will cause a big problem to all the Arab countries and to the whole world. So that's why there was quite a good support from the Arab countries, and that's why in every time that Egypt faces challenges, there is good support from its allies. So,
can you tell us a little bit about, examples of how certain countries stood by Egypt at that time?
Yeah, I mentioned Saudi Arabia when they did this oil embargo. Also, Libya and Algeria by sending troops and artillery and also infantry walking all the distance from Algeria. If you remember this great speech by the Algerian president at that time, Hawari Boumediene, when he spoke that everybody should participate in support of Egypt as Egypt. I'm not sure that he mentioned that Egypt supported the Algerian Algerian operation, but liberation, but Egypt supported Arab countries all over. Like also, for example, Sheikh Zayed of the Emirates loves Egypt, and this is
there was support maybe
afterwards generations.
Exactly. It was like the span of time was different. So post-war and pre-war, there was different types of support that was provided.
Yes, exactly.
By the
Arabs.
It differs because our moment nowadays is a bit different than 6th of October. For example, like cutting oil reserves was really something very important and crucial, and also the Americans and the foreign countries didn't think of this thing. Maybe nowadays they would think, but another tool will be, and maybe the enemies differ, so it's like you'd have different challenges at that time than this time.
Well, as an assistant lecturer at the Faculty of Political Science, what are the main points that usually you tackle with your students when you talk about the 6th of October war?
Yeah, usually I'm interested in this kind of solidarity, the solidarity between people at that time, at that moment, when different sectors and of the Egyptian people used to go to the hospitals, either supporting wounded people, and those are the events or the scenes that capture my attention. Also, I'm interested in the new classified documents of the 6th of October war, for example, and how I've recently read a report by the CIA called Nixon and the Arab-Israeli conflicts, or the Arab-Israeli war, when they mentioned how Sadat was a genius and how he was really brilliant in misleading the CIA itself and Israelis at that time, and how this surprise was really shocking.
Yes. What other examples did you find, on those confidential documents and research that you're doing?
I'm interested also in the maps they are showing of the exact places where the attacks and the war was taking place, the different cities and the different villages where attacks were there. Maybe we don't show this very much, where the attacks were really held. Maybe some images that were not
Because it was scattered, so it was not only the certain point, it's different points,
Yeah.
and it continued for a couple of days.
Yes, also this timeline of events that took place every day and how others see the war. So we see
Yes.
that war that we did it and we could actually defeat the Israelis, and how they see us. So it's different kind of
Yes.
image.
And how do you approach that in the classroom? The different images. Tell us more about that.
It's like we over time we're seeing maybe the same images, we're hearing the same songs, even though it's delivering the spirit that was there to us, that we didn't witness this war at that time, but this was the memory we got. But also it's important if there's something different than what's we're watching every day. So it's like having more information about what happened actually at that time, how Kissinger viewed the war, how he he said, it's also mentioned in this report that he said that it was a failure of intelligence, of American intelligence, and the Israeli as well.
Yes.
So
And as you
different like takes on these things.
yes, as you research into this and part of your studies and part of what you teach your students, what is the differences today? 43 years back. What is changing positively? What is changing negatively, in your opinion, as someone who's researching into history deeply?
I think that even though we know the history, but it's important that we take the lessons. That even though that any challenges will confront us, we will be able to confront it, and even though it's really hard and it's
And
really
that's the
tough,
main
because
purpose of history. So
yeah,
it's like
taking
learning from.
lessons, yeah, and even though that there were a lot of economic problems before the war, and also what's important for me that how we shifted this 6-day war of 1967 to the 6 hours war of 1973. So how we did this. So it's the shift from the defeat to the victory is really important during the war of attrition specifically. Is really vital, that even though were confronting a lot of challenges, and even though we didn't have an army at that time, how we could build this up again.
Well, Dr. Mariam Waheed, Assistant Lecturer at the Faculty of Political Science, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will be going to a quick break, and then we'll be back, so stay tuned for more coming up on Nile Cruise.